Hi, we're Nia and Marianne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every Friday where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too. So if there's something that you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon. Hello,
Hello,
Marianne, how are you?
I'm all right. And I think you've got something you're really interested in talking about today.
Well, yes, we're going to talk about sleep and I love sleep. Doesn't everyone love sleep?
And I sleep probably less than you, so I'm always interested.
Yes, but mainly because I discovered a new word that has been coined
Oh,
called
yeah.
and the word is orthosomnia.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
No.
Orthosomnia. So that means what
The
does.
obsession in getting good night's rest.
Okay. So that's interesting. So there's some other ortho words, are there?
Yes, so there's orthorexia, which is the obsession with healthy eating
Healthy
or being,
eating.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
Um,
So
I can't think
ortho
of any
means
more now.
obsession in Greek, I presume. Yeah. Anyway,
I don't actually
let's
know what
move
it
on
means.
from the linguistics. So
Yes,
people are getting very obsessed with sleep, and how does that
yes.
manifest itself?
Well, this term has not been sort of medically coined yet in terms
No.
of being used in the real world, but it has been
Yeah.
used in some studies from some sleep clinics and some sleep doctors. And what they are telling us is they have coined this term because we or certain people have become obsessed with tracking their sleep according to those trackers that you can get that also do your
Okay.
steps, the
Yeah.
watches. And they are presenting to sleep clinics suggesting they have a sleep
Okay.
problem
Yeah.
based on the data from the trackers
Oh,
and
excellent. Yeah.
actually
Good for sleep clinic if you want to
yeah,
make money.
either
Yeah.
not having a problem at all
Yeah.
or making their sleep worse because of their obsession with
Okay. That's
closing the
interesting.
ring, like you do on Apple
Yes.
Health or
Yes.
or
I
having
mean,
a certain night's sleep.
one of the interesting things about sleep, that's different to other obsessions is that you have no control other than the control of the amount of time that you give sleep. So,
Mm,
you're going to go to bed at a certain time, you have control over that. But once you're in bed and sleeping, you
there's
don't
nothing you can
necessarily have control.
yeah.
And you might, we talk about healthy eating and obsessions with particularly about healthy food. So at least you have choices there. But I think
Mm.
the sleep bit's slightly more complicated. And as you say, the more obsessed you become with sleeping, the less good your brain is at doing it, I think.
Yes,
But
it
let's
also
discuss.
becomes a
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
poor sleep also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you think you're
Yes,
gonna sleep badly, so then
exactly.
you do. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. And
absolutely.
I know a lot about that. So
Yes.
let's first of all, what about these phases, the sort of physiology of sleep?
We should understand that there are phases of sleep in
Yeah.
order to understand exactly what these sleep trackers can tell you,
Yes.
because that is what we really need to know about. So, are sleep trackers actually any good? There are different phases of sleep. You start off with the first one, which is the lightest one, which everybody sort of knows about because if you fall asleep, on the sofa, something might quite easily wake you up, for example, because you're still in
Okay.
that
So you're
light
quite
phase.
light. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
light. Okay.
You're starting to relax, your body and your brain
Yeah.
activity starts to slow
Slow
down.
down.
You might move around a bit, but if yeah, as I said, if you're in front of the TV and you've fallen asleep on the sofa,
Yeah.
someone coughing
Yeah.
next to you might wake you
Yeah.
up. Or
So if you've just gone to bed before your partner and you've just gone to sleep and then they come to bed that.
that's annoying, isn't it? Yeah,
Okay. So that's phase one. Okay. And then what
yeah.
happens?
And then there's a second phase, which is still light sleep, but in
Yeah.
this point, you get some of the things we associate with sleep. So a drop in body temperature, your muscles
Okay.
relax, your breathing slows down, and your heart rate slows down. At this point, if you were in a sleep clinic where they'd attach
Yeah.
sensors to your brain,
Yeah.
you would actually be able to see that your brain activity slows down.
Okay.
But there are short bursts of activity in your brain that actually help you not be woken up. So if you are in that phase by the time your partner comes up the stairs to bed,
You might not wake up at
you
all.
might not wake up. So this is called stage 2 of sleep, and
Okay.
you go through cycles of this during the night. And every
Stage
time
1 and
that
stage 2. Yeah.
oh no, so the first bit, the lighter bit that we talked about to begin with,
Yeah.
that is only at the first bit of
Okay.
the night. But
Okay.
stage 2, you go through periodically as you go through 3 and 4, and then back to 2, if you
Oh,
see what I
okay.
mean.
Okay.
Yeah, as we go through the night, those that stage 2 cycle um is a bit longer.
Okay.
During the whole night, it gets longer and longer, extends, and then we spend about half our time in that phase.
And you're less likely to wake in stage 2
Yeah, so if you get to stage
from
2
outside
before
stimuli? Yeah.
yeah, if you get to stage 2, it takes about 7 minutes or something to get to that, then you're gonna stay asleep for a bit longer, which is great.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so that's the second phase. And then you get into something called deep sleep.
Oh, this is the bit you really want?
But yes, this is the important bit in terms of
Yeah.
sleep health,
Yeah.
because this is where the experts think that you get body recovery and growth. Your body makes essential repairs, you boost your immune system, and you
Okay.
also store memories in this type of sleep. So, yeah, this is really important sleep, deep sleep.
O
It's also known as something called slow wave sleep. When you have the electrodes
Yeah,
on your
they get
brain,
very slow.
you can see they're called delta waves.
Okay.
This is when you really really are asleep, you're totally relaxed, your muscle tone is in a relaxed state, everything is decreased, your pulse, your breathing rate, everything.
I'd love to go in one of those
Pods.
sleep clinics apart. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd love to see exactly what my brain's doing. But anyway, I'm not going to probably get the chance.
you never
Okay.
know. I
Yeah,
Yes.
keep going because I think what you feel like about sleep, and that's what we're talking about, really, is very different, of course, to what really happens. And the problem is
Exactly.
that we only have a perspective about how we sleep. Anyway,
so
let's
so
not jump the gun.
let's not jump the gun. So that's the crucial phase of sleep. Then
Yeah,
we get everybody knows about rapid eye movement sleep, where
yeah,
if you look
that,
at someone's
yeah,
eyelids, you see their eyes darting about.
yeah.
And that's again
We see
a
it in
different
dogs.
you do see it in dogs, and then they do that
Yes, yeah.
phantom running thing.
Yeah,
That's always
they
makes
they
me laugh.
run, yeah, so great, yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, your brain activity changes again and is very
So
active. And that's
is
when
it?
you have
Okay.
your vivid dreams, because
Right.
that's when you've got
Okay.
the most brain activity. You can have dreams apparently in any stage of sleep, but this is the most vivid
Yeah, the
ones.
most vivid,
So,
okay.
the weird ones where you're
Yes.
dreaming that,
Yeah,
you and
yeah.
I are in the
Yeah.
Bahamas.
Yeah, that one.
That one. Yeah. We
That
love the
will probably
Bahamas.
always remain in our sleep, but yes.
Yes, never mind. If we ever
Never
actually
mind.
get there,
Yeah,
Marianne, we'll be like,
we
what do we
try our
do?
best. We try our best.
Okay, and then
Okay.
we just cycle through all of these stages
Right.
through the night. So between 2, 3, and 4, we do about 4 to 6 cycles. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the stages of sleep. So it's important to know what
Yeah.
they are and also how you know what they are. And as it turns out, the only thing that you can really do to tell how good your sleep
Mm.
has been in that is go to a
Mm.
sleep lab and
Yeah.
have your heart
Yeah.
rate, your electrodes
Everything
on your
measured.
brain
Your
measured. Yeah,
temperature, yeah. Yeah,
all
I'd
of
love
that,
to do that because it would tell myself what is going on. Because the
what you're
problem
truly
is with
doing.
sleep is that if you ask people to describe their sleep, as you say, they have a perception. So they might say, "Oh, I had a terrible night," but actually, it's maybe because they were woken at the wrong time, or I don't know, they woke too many times in the night, but actually they got enough sleep in between. Maybe they've got a snoring partner. What I mean is, it's their perception of what a terrible night is rather than what it actually is.
Exactly. So the important thing is to say then that the sleep trackers that we put around our
Yeah,
wrists or on
yeah,
our fingers, the
yeah.
rings.
The rings, yeah, I've always fancied one of those, but never have got one.
Well, funnily enough, they can't give you the feedback that you need
From
to
your
tell you
brain.
no.
Yes.
How,
So they give you feedback from movement, I presume?
yes. So what they are really is a motion sensor.
Okay, so it depends how you're moving. So if you're not moving for long periods, it thinks you're in a deep sleep, presumably.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So they boast on their in their promotional information that they
Do they?
are
Really?
amazing at giving you biological feedback. In fact, when I was looking into this, one of the trackers tells you what animal you sleep like. Did you want to ever think about that?
Oh, I'd like to sleep like a bear. I think they sleep well.
What,
You
I'll
know,
wake up and
it
stuff your face and then go back to sleep
yeah,
again?
in hibernation. I presume hibernating animals go into very deep sleeps.
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I can't ever say that I've had that desire to find out what animal I sleep like,
No,
but
no.
should you ever
Well,
wish
it's
to?
not necessarily gonna help you, is it?
Well, I didn't
I
think it would
mean,
either. It's just a gimmick, isn't it?
yeah, well, they're all
Okay.
gimmicks really, aren't they?
Yes. So
I
anyway,
mean,
what
the only tracker I've got is the tracker on my Apple iPhone, which is really bad to sleep with. And,
yes, you shouldn't be sleeping with your phone.
no, and it tells me ridiculous things about how well I've been sleeping when I haven't. So, yeah, I have no interest in tracking, but a lot of people do.
They do, and I think this is the trouble because they
Mm,
think that the data that they're getting from these sleep
is
trackers
useful.
is useful. So,
Mm,
yeah, as I said, they measure your movement with a motion sensor. That's pretty self-explanatory, and that is obviously understandable in terms of they're also
mm,
used for tracking running and
of
walking and all
course,
of that kind of
yeah,
thing. So,
yeah,
fair enough.
yeah.
They also measure something called your heart rate variability.
Okay,
Okay. So this is the difference in your heart rate during
yeah,
those different periods of
yeah.
sleep. So the
Yeah,
light
which is
sleep.
sort of relevant, presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So they sort of use that to estimate how long you've spent in each cycle of sleep.
Okay. Yeah, I
Um
can see the relevance. I still don't see that it would help you necessarily do anything about it, but tracking isn't always about therapy, is it? It's sometimes just about awareness.
yeah, so I think it can be useful for awareness, but I don't think it should be something that we rely on. And that is what the sleep
Okay.
experts were saying
Okay.
is that people are presenting with the data from their trackers
Yes.
and saying, I don't sleep very
I have
well.
a
And
sleep disorder. Yeah.
yes, and
Okay.
medicalizing something that just isn't
That's
medical.
really interesting, but isn't that because we have told people that if they don't sleep well, a whole lot of terrible things can happen to them? I mean,
Well, maybe. And also, I think not being able to sleep is probably number one on the most frustrating things that can
yes. Oh,
happen
I
in
can vouch
life.
for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's nothing worse than knowing you've got to get up at a certain time to do something like go to work and
Yeah.
you can't sleep. Oh, golly, yes. I mean,
And
I'm at the
if you've got
other
to
bit, but
catch a train or a
yes,
plane or
yes.
go somewhere, you find yourself waking up every couple of hours, don't you?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
or
need to
not being
know.
able to sleep. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, understandably, they have some sort of gimmicky value in terms
yeah,
of you could use
yeah,
them,
yeah.
but we have to be really careful when we interpret the data because they've got this other element that perhaps the tracking people didn't ever think about when they put these together,
Yeah,
which is that people often use them to compare their sleep with each other, don't they?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
know parents who will compare their sleep data with each other when they wake up in the morning to
Golly,
sort of tag team who is it that gets up and looks after the kids
like
because
like Wordle for insomniacs.
yeah, so basically, who is more tired and who had
Oh
less better
dear.
quality or quantity of sleep, and therefore, that person wins
Yeah,
the
interesting. So
bingo.
the same could be said for tracking steps. Of course, I mean they're really useful step trackers,
Mm,
I think, because they give you an awareness of how little you step. And
mm.
like you went to London yesterday and told me you did 20,000 steps, which I was very jealous of. So if you lived in London, you'd have to eat a lot more food, let me tell you. So good thing you don't.
I've
But
no problem with
but
that whatsoever.
and I think the elements that are good about that sort of competitiveness with yourself,
Yeah,
because I can look at my tracker and think, oh, I'll have to go for another walk with the dog. I don't think that's a bad thing. But
no.
sleep's so different because I think unless you're talking about the time you're going to spend in bed, which you do have control over,
Mm,
and maybe you have control over some of the other stuff that we'll talk about at the end about, sleep hygiene.
yeah,
But the control over your brain is really
yeah,
less easy to maneuver.
mm,
So I can do all the sleep hygiene in the world, but
yeah,
for whatever reason, and the reasons I suspect are quite crucial about why some people sleep less well than others. And there will also be some biology, there'll also be genetics, there'll be
hmm
all sorts of temperatures of rooms and noise and a million factors.
Mm,
But unfortunately, we don't have control over some of them. And
mm.
so you then presumably get obsessed with not sleeping well.
Yeah. And the danger here is that people get obsessed with getting a perfect sleep score. So
Okay.
the other thing that these things apparently do is give you a score of how well
Oh,
you're
yes,
sleeping.
yes. Oh,
And of
golly.
course, if you're very
Yeah,
competitive, you'll want to
yeah,
beat that score. We become focused on getting 100%. And
yeah.
then we become reliant on really imprecise data because remember, what it really
Mm,
is a motion
mm,
sensor
yeah.
and a heart rate monitor on your wrist. And that is not as accurate as a heart rate monitor closer to your heart.
So you're judging it on the wrong stuff, really.
Yeah, and I think the other
Um,
thing is if you're lying in bed and you're not moving, right? Say you're desperately trying to go back to sleep and you're not moving, the tracker will tell you you're asleep.
yeah, it's got you fast asleep. I'm a sort of master of trying to go back to sleep, and the laugh is that you're very suggestible, and as soon as you try to go back to sleep, it all becomes frighteningly out out of your reach.
Reached. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah,
and when you ask somebody how they go back to sleep, they won't know because they just go back to sleep.
exactly.
So
So
it's a
it's a
weird
very weird
setup.
thing. And then we know that from sleep hygiene recommendations that lying in your bed awake is a really bad thing to do because then your brain,
Well,
which is, as you
yeah.
say, highly suggestible, associates lying in
Yes,
bed
okay.
as being awake. And then you can't get to sleep and it makes it harder.
There's a lot of different triggers though. So if you have patterns of sleep, I mean, which I do sort of, if you always get up and make a cup of tea, you'll
Mm.
end up not being able to go back to sleep unless you
Until
make the
you've
cup
made a
of
cup of
tea.
tea. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it is very fraught with also so lying there not getting up in some ways might be better for the pattern than so I
Yeah, but
would
if you're
say
lying
it's
there for hours, it is not a good
frustrated
thing.
out your
Yeah,
head. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not a
No,
good
I
thing. And
get
all the
it.
sleep
But
hygiene recommendations say
yeah,
don't.
don't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they writing it from us. They probably sleeping, those guys, honestly.
Oh, are you sure? Are you sure about that? Are you?
Yeah, honestly, I could write it from a non-sleep point of view. But I do think lots of people write this stuff who actually have no idea
Dear, what
what it's
insomnia
like.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm very sympathetic, although I do think the more you accept that maybe your sleep patterns aren't perfect, the better you'll sleep.
Yeah,
There's some very odd
yeah.
sort of, when you try to teach your baby to sleep.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I don't have to do
So,
that anymore. It was
they
awful.
have no pattern in the beginning, and then slowly you try to pattern them with the circadian sort of stuff. And then if you don't feed them when they want to be fed and you manage to get them back to sleep, I don't know, with, patting them or giving them water or whatever you do, slowly the patterns emerge and they don't then wake for the milk.
Mm,
There's very similar stuff that goes on in sleep all throughout life, really.
yeah.
That, if you always reward yourself for waking with a hot chocolate, you might
You're
find
gonna
that
wake
you're
up
going to
more
have
often.
to, yeah,
It's like Pavlov's dog. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think ultimately what I was driving
Yeah,
at with
what
all
you're
of
trying to
this
say.
is don't be obsessed with your sleep tracker because they are very inaccurate. They're never going to give you a true pattern of what you're actually doing with
Yeah,
sleep.
accept that.
But instead of that, and I think, to a certain extent, again, we have been conditioned to think that this is how we monitor our sleep. But it's
Yes,
about stepping outside of that and saying, well, I refuse to be told by a small motion sensor and
how
quite
I'm
frankly, a
sleeping.
hugely inaccurate heart rate monitor because of
Yeah,
how far it is away
yeah,
from your heart, how I actually slept. And instead, I think we should use a little bit more of reflection about thinking about actually how tired are we, and then we'll rate our own sleep using our own methods of feedback rather than a little
yeah,
device on our wrist.
yeah. I mean, I suppose what you're saying is that people that then put up saying they have a sleep disorder at a sleep clinic are wanting something that isn't necessarily that useful for them. So
Yeah,
maybe they are just light sleepers, and we do know that some people
some
are
people
lighter
are.
sleepers than others. And maybe we have to lower the bar, and say,
Yes. So
if
people,
you feel good in the mornings and you're refreshed by your sleep, you do not have a sleep disorder, even if you're not doing it
as many
perfectly.
hours as it says on
Yeah,
your tracker. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And we know, don't we, that people need different levels of sleep at different
yeah.
ages,
At different times.
at
Yeah.
different times of life. There's also a really unique variability between how much sleep a person actually needs. So if you look at the adult recommendations,
Mm,
it's a range. It's not every adult
mm,
needs 8
mm.
hours. It's a range between 7 to 9, and some people will be
Yeah.
extremely outside that range. Women who are going or menstruating in certain times of their cycle, we are more tired, so we need more sleep, and that is absolutely
Mm.
fine.
Well, early pregnancy need more sleep. People who are
Exactly.
unwell need more sleep because your
Yeah,
immune system wants to rest.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we are older, we know we need less sleep.
So they
So our patterns
say.
of
So
sleep
they
will
say.
change.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then
I'm
there are
still
all other
waiting for that.
extraneous factors, like if
Exactly.
you drink alcohol, that affects the quality of your sleep and
Yeah.
therefore you
And
wake
that
more
might get
frequently.
worse as you get older, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you might be more sensitive to that, or
Yeah.
you've had caffeine or more
Yeah.
caffeine than usual.
I mean, some people find any caffeine's really hard to sleep with. Other people can. I mean, we had coffee after dinner last night. My husband, it doesn't even vaguely affect him.
Yeah.
I would not just sleep all night if I had caffeine at 10 o'clock at night.
So I used to be able to lie in bed at 10 o'clock at night and drink a cup of tea, turn the light off, go to sleep, and wake up in the morning.
Yeah,
Since
yeah.
I've had children, I am no longer able to do that.
No, is that just because your tolerance has got you're metabolizing things slightly slower? We know that happens as you
Yeah.
get older. Mm.
I am not sure why it is. I have a
No,
feeling it's related to the fact that as a parent I sleep less deeply than I
yeah,
used
because
to,
you're listening.
because you're always listening out for your child.
Yeah.
And I think that the presence of caffeine then sort of exacerbates that in some way.
So
But
do
anyway,
men have different sleep disorders?
men are always
Anyway, let's
different,
not go
Maria.
into the gender thing.
No, let's
No,
not.
it's not a good
No.
idea on a
All I
podcast.
would
Okay.
say is that they are surprisingly tolerant of small children in their beds and do not understand how long they have been there,
Or that you
interestingly.
might have been up 4 times in the night because they're a bit surprised by that and actually think you might have made it up. But anyway, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
No.
So it's sort of
Yes.
sleep hygiene, of course, they're very true. Caffeine,
Yes.
alcohol, the temperature of a room makes a lot of difference to
Yeah.
me. So I cannot sleep in hot rooms.
No,
Yeah.
you do need your body temperature in order to make it into deep
Mm,
sleep has to drop. So you do
mm.
need a cold room to sleep in, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes a big difference to me. And exercise, presumably, if you do strenuous exercise late at night, it increases your cortisol levels. I
Yeah,
presume
and
it makes you more alert.
it
Yeah.
makes you more alert. Yeah, so they do say don't eat or exercise
Mm,
for 3 hours
mm.
before you go to bed because you won't sleep as well. Um,
Yeah.
Now there's information about blue light from
Yes,
screens.
we're very confused about blue light. There's information and more information and then some uninformation. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sort of a bit
ultimately,
lost about blue light.
I
Yeah.
think I think it's a like you can still watch the television until you go to bed if that doesn't affect your sleep, but
Yeah.
you should dim things. So your light should be dimmed by 50%.
Because you're
Um,
trying to get the circadian
because you're
type, and
trying
when
to
you think about it,
yeah.
cavemen had, circadian rhythms that didn't depend on electric lights, and we have a lot more electric light than
Yes.
we ever did. Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
we've been bombarded with light
Yeah.
sources, aren't we? So it's all
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
And it's making, it's improving things like being aware of your alcohol, being aware of your smoking and
Yeah.
your coffee,
And
caffeine.
eating big meals late at night, which
Don't eat a
definitely
big meal
affects
late
me
at night.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when you go to sleep, your body is going to do all of that rest and digest business. So if
Yeah.
you give it
Oh,
a big
yes, of
meal,
course.
something to
Yeah.
work
It's
on
it's
before you
got
go to
4
sleep.
hours of it's got 4 hours of digestion to do before you hit the
Yeah.
the rest place. I
Yeah.
always think that. I think, golly, how do you expect to get to the rest bit when you've still got 4 hours of digesting to do?
Yeah. Your body's still working hard. So we have to give it some options. And a
And
couple of things,
yeah,
um, they say, go to bed at the same time, get up at the
yes,
same time, even if you've had a
yes.
poor night's sleep. That is a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
good
yeah.
rule
I
to
sort
live
of
by.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To make the pattern, because otherwise you catch up on bad sleep, you sleep late and it mucks up the pattern for the next
Yeah.
24 hours. I mean, I think that's all. And that's the sort of CBT side of sleep hygiene,
So
isn't it? And
yeah,
there is evidence for that.
there's a huge amount of evidence. So
Mm,
I'm thinking about maybe 10 to 15 years ago,
mm.
we were doing a lot of work on medication for sleep.
Yeah.
And there are, so
Yeah,
when
there are
you
various
first when you started
medications.
to practice, you had things
Yeah.
like temazepam, so
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
benzodiazepines.
Yeah.
And then
Nice little goo-filled capsules, those. Yeah.
anyway,
You
so a lot of people
anyway,
got
yeah.
addicted to benzodiazepines, and so
Yes,
therefore they were
golly.
not allowed anymore. And then so the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry obviously develops an alternative, which were
Yeah.
called the Z drugs. So
Okay.
Zopiclone and
Clone, yeah.
Zolpidem
Yeah.
are some of the names of those, and they are very effective at putting you to sleep. But all of those drugs that help you to sleep, they're
Yeah.
not giving you a real sleep. They're giving you a drug-induced
Okay.
sleep.
So
So
you don't go into the deep sleep on them?
I think you miss out on some crucial phases
Oh,
of
okay.
sleep,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
or your body doesn't actually cycle through in the same way because you're basically sedated.
So I promise you, if you're an insomniac, they're very attractive, but I
I'm sure they are.
absolutely
Yeah.
understand. Yeah.
So now
Mm.
the evidence is with something called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So specific targeted
Okay.
CBT
So
for root causes of insomnia.
okay,
And apparently the evidence for that is way in
good.
of excess of how well the drugs work.
Okay.
So
Yeah, which is good.
they
Mm.
yeah, so and it is available on the NHS. So if you do struggle with your sleep,
Might be that some areas do better than others at the
yeah,
availability.
I think it's worth asking about. So if you
Mm.
struggle with your
Mm.
sleep to the point where we're not talking about this is the data from your sleep tracker now, but if you wake up in the morning, you don't
Mm.
feel refreshed,
Mm.
or you know that you can, you aren't sleeping well. And I think this is all about the reflection of how you are personally sleeping and
Yeah.
being honest with yourself
Which
rather
is
than
all you've
just,
got, to be
which is
fair.
all
I
you've
mean, that
got. Yeah.
is what you've got. Yeah.
So if that is the problem, or that is a problem for you, then absolutely the most important thing to do is access help, and it is available, and it is evidence based, and it's far more helpful and less
Than
addictive
anything else.
and problematic
Yeah.
than long term medicating your
Isn't
sleep.
it a bit like, depression, where we talk about people who have sort of reactive depression? So they have something happens to them and they get depressed. The same way, you could not sleep well at a particular time in life because there are other factors. So it's complicated. It's not just
Yeah.
physiological.
And
There's a
also
lot
just
of
being aware that, if you're a new parent and your sleep's
yeah,
terrible,
yeah.
it's because you're a
It
new
will get
parent.
better.
It will get
Yeah,
better.
it will get
There were
better. Yeah.
obviously times of life where you don't
Yeah,
expect
exactly.
perfect sleep.
Yeah. And
Um,
when they're teenagers, you won't be able to get them up in the morning, I'm just saying.
I am longing for that. With the clock change this week, my children have decided to get up at 5.
5 and 5, yes, lovely. Well, they'll
Thank
have
you
to go
so
to bed
much.
at 6 then, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not
Anyway.
quiet about it. So we wake up at 5, which we're
Oh,
delighted by.
golly, you poor things.
Never mind.
I'd lock the door, soundproof the room, and then tell them to make their own breakfast. Mm.
Yes,
And
perhaps
not
not.
wake you unless, the
The house
house
is
was
burning
burning
down.
down.
Mm.
Anyway, that's my type of parenting. It didn't go well, as we know, so
I'm not entirely sure
necessarily
they would wake me up if the
I'm
house
not
was burning
necessarily
down.
selling you that. But anyway, CBT is worth a
CBTI.
look at. Yeah,
Mm.
CBTI, well, yeah.
It's all CBT
Okay.
really. It's just more
All
focused
right.
on insomnia.
I quite agree. I would not buy one of those rings. I've always fancied it, but I know that it's not really going to be therapeutic for
Yeah,
my actual sleep, which, if you're going to buy a gadget to help you sleep, which doesn't help you sleep, that seems like not a
madness.
great, yeah,
Yeah,
not a
I
great
mean,
marketing
if
thing.
if you have it and it's activated on your watch and it's not going to become an obsessive
Yeah,
thing, then yeah,
obsession.
fine, this is
Yeah,
fine. But
yeah.
if you're at any point checking it to go, oh, how many hours of sleep did I get today, and using that
Yes,
as a competitive kind of
yes.
thing, then we need to maybe no take
Yeah,
that
and it
off.
maybe makes you feel worse if you think you've had a
Yeah,
bad night
I think it
on
does.
your tracker. I think
Yeah.
that's the point, isn't it? You know if you feel bad or you feel great, it's not really that
I mean, it's
difficult, is
like
it?
when your husband tells you, "Oh, I slept terribly last night," and you think,
Yes,
"Well,
and you think
I
that's
don't
funny
think
because
you
you
did
snored
because
all
I was
night.
awake and you were snoring."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
no, exactly, exactly. So you don't need sleep trackers, guys. You need to look at getting to bed. That's the first thing, and allowing yourself to sleep. And then you need to look at sleep hygiene stuff. And for some of us, I mean, there are all sorts of factors involved. Some of it's even
Mm,
genetic, I fear. Some of
absolutely,
us
and I
sleep
think
really well all our lives, and some of us find
don't.
sleep more elusive. Yeah.
And also with sleep, if you've tried the sleep hygiene things and they're not necessarily working, it's also always worth looking at your stress management and your techniques for
Yes,
dealing with
absolutely. That's
stress.
what I come to the conclusion of, that you're more likely to be wakeful if you have a higher cortisol
Cortisol
level at the
response.
bottom there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
more on that another time.
yes, more on that. I'm actually working on that now. So, one day we'll do a podcast on that very amazing vagal nerve system we've got, and what we can do about soothing it.
Cool. Righty ho. I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye for
Bye.
now.